Next, overview of culture of expectancy in Wichita Public Schools. During the 2017-18 school year, a culture of expectancy will be established in elementary schools to focus on hiring practices, student behaviors, and creating an inclusive culture. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of the professional learning and collaboration that will take place during the 2017-18 school year. This presentation is for the board's information.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me here this evening. I think you will tell once I start my presentation that Dr. Thompson talks about her team, but we really are working as a team. I feel like Dr. Irving just pretty much wrapped up everything I was going to say. So we are all on the same page, which is very exciting. We are in the elementary ranks creating a culture of expectancy, and I think the rationale for that is Dr. Thompson's leadership. She has created that and set that vision for us as assistant superintendents. And she is challenging us to use our data, which you talked to and heard about a little bit earlier, to drive our actions in elementary and as a district, but also to think big and problem solve based around that data. And, we all here are very proud to work in this large urban district, but sometimes those two words, large and urban, can create some professional development and professional learning difficulties because of the diversity, not maybe difficulties, but challenges because of the diversity of our schools. And so part of the rationale for having this culture of expectancy and the things that we're going to talk about today, those 3 points, the teacher retention and recruitment, the positive behavior supports, and the inclusive culture, are around the need to understand each of our schools individually and provide some differentiation based on needs of kids and teachers and the professional development plans that Dr. Irving just spoke about. We will begin to talk with our administrators about narrowing the focus this year. We, Mr. Wendt and I, believe that it's our responsibility to narrow that focus so that our buildings can work on professional development that meets their needs. So first we will talk to them a lot, and it will be a focus this year of instructional strategies with the expectation that our leaders grow professionally. So the expectation for us is to provide that professional development for our leaders, and then that translates back to the building, to our teachers, and ultimately to those who matter the most are the kiddos that sit in front of our teachers. So we will work in partnership with Dr. Irving and Learning Services on Marzano work that she just discussed with you. And we will also narrow the focus in our social emotional character development plan. And again, you will hear more about that in August as we have had a team that has been developing that 3-year strategic plan that we will visit with you later. But kind of the points that shore up that social emotional character development, are the MTSS and safe and civil work. And I believe you have a rubric in front of you that will help our principals and our leadership teams within our buildings. It's the blue MTSS rubric. Kind of revisit where we are in the Safe and Civil Schools Foundation modules. Our hope is that in shoring up and tightening up that work and making sure that we have those modules completed, that will help with some of our behaviors in our buildings and just our procedures in that safe and civil environment. We will also do some social emotional learning, which is second step, and Dr. Guthrie spoke to you a month or so ago about implementing that in all of our elementary classrooms. Also, we will work in the area of trauma. And trauma in terms of chronic stress that some of our kiddos feel and come to us with every day, looking at life situations and the kiddos in front of us through a different lens that's not always punitive, but understanding the situations that represent maybe some things that are uncomfortable in our schools and finding solutions, positive solutions to help kids work through that. And then lastly, the culturally diverse competencies, which is really just understanding those kiddos that are sitting in front of you, understanding their culture, and how you can bring that culture into instruction and layer it into those Marzano strategies so that the work is meaningful and purposeful and kids have something to connect their new learning with, which is their life and their biographies. So we're excited about this work.
We do have a question.
Yes.
Ms. Arnold?
Actually, I'd like to go back, you mentioned safe and civil, and I know when we first implemented that, we really saw a nice bump. And as time has passed, that bump has kind of flattened and started to trend downward. Are we doing something specific with, I don't know, refocusing or reteaching or revisiting?
Absolutely.
Do-
And that's that rubric that you have there in front of you. What we're going to offer at our principal academies, which have a new name, Principal Learning Academies, we want to focus that learning piece for folks, is to make sure that principals go back through that rubric and as kind of a checklist to say, I have these things in place in our building, and when we don't, offering at our learning academies differentiated instruction for how do we bring this back to the building and make sure we have these things in place. You think about the number of new principals that we have in our elementary buildings who were not in administrator or leadership roles when we rolled this out 7 years ago. There's quite a few. And so we're bringing this back to the forefront to make sure that all of our buildings are on the same page.
And I guess what I'm saying, because I don't think this was actually implemented with Fidelity district-wide when we actually brought in safe and civil. So I guess I'm trying to see, are we going to do a little more with retraining or,
Absolutely.
Not just talking
That is
about it, but-
what we will expect.
okay.
We expect that by, hopefully, we'll see, we've done kind of a little survey and we'll see where buildings are, that we are through Module C and every building has procedures and expectations in place, has systems in place within their building to be through Module C by the end of the first semester. We hope that's not too ambitious, but again, we will provide the differentiation that each building needs so that we can get everybody on the same page, because it is our expectation that we will follow this rubric and have MTSS implemented the way that it should be implemented.
Okay.
Okay.
Joy has one.
Joy?
I didn't want
There
you
you
to
are.
move on before sorry. I guess my question, and this might be for Superintendent Thompson, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but my question is, if the expectation is there, but then it doesn't happen, where's the accountability? Where does it sit? How do we make sure that we implement with fidelity, as Ms. Arnold said?
Again, that's the importance of looking at our data. When you are implementing anything, you have to have checkpoints. You can't just say, here's the materials, here's the things, and then go ye therefore and do them. Because people will do them if they like it, that kind of thing. So what we're looking at is data. We're looking at progress. So we'll know if schools are utilizing what we've asked them to utilize or some thereabout, because what you'll begin to see is that you'll have decreases in the behaviors in the buildings. You'll begin to see, as you walk into buildings, more structures in place in classrooms and building-wide. So what we will be doing to assure accountability is what you would do with anything else, is that you would look at the results that you're receiving on a regular basis. We have periodical checkpoints that we have scheduled in our work. We do it once a month in our DLT. We will be doing data dives, and then we will use our executive councils, and we will do that about 3 or 4 times a year, where we will also be looking at our data dives. So we will be looking at the results that we're receiving from the professional development that we're giving, the teacher's implementation of that, and the results of what we will be getting from the students.
So, just a little devil's advocate here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
That's good.
So some teachers in the past have complained that principals send kids back to the room so that those office referrals don't get counted. And that's one of the things we heard a lot last year in those conversations we were having before we hired you. So what I think I hear you saying is that we have data we're going to look at that's objective, but then we also have people dropping in seeing behaviors happening, seeing systems in place as well. So it's almost like trust but verify.
Well,
a
what
little
we
bit.
don't want to do is to micromanage
Right.
or make people feel like we're the hammer, you know? But we also want to, so we want to give them the opportunity to be able to do the things that are going to be successful for students as it relates to their behavior. So we're gonna expect for schools to be able to decrease. Our ultimate goal is the results. So we're looking to see the decrease in behaviors, decrease in office referrals, decrease in suspensions, expulsions, all the whole gamut. So we will be monitoring that data. So our assumption is when we give professional development and teachers are able to choose, as we talked about before, what they need, and that's one of our choices that will start in August. They get to choose where they feel like their weak areas are, go to those professional developments so that they get the skills that they need to be able to manage the behaviors and the students in the classroom. So I guess, am I answering the question that you're asking, or?
I-
Because there were
Sort
two things in that question. One
Well-
was the referrals and people not putting them in, and then the other one was accountability. So,
Right, well, so I guess where my concern is if the gatekeeper, and I'm not throwing all principals under, because I love our principals, we have amazing people, but every once in a while, there's a question, right? And so we've had teachers tell us they sent students for throwing a chair to the principal, and the principal sent them back to their classroom, which to me would seem like that might be a legitimate office referral, but I wasn't there, so I don't know. But we hear enough of these stories that you then start to wonder if the people in charge of those numbers that we're measuring are also in charge of whether they deal with the situation, how they choose to deal with the situation. Are we allowing those people to skew those numbers, and where's the accountability that that doesn't happen?
yeah, hence the importance of their professional principals academies where they'll be doing all this learning. Because what happens is that if you're not calibrated, it's like anything else that you do. Some people think that this is a reason to go home. Some people don't think that that's a reason for a child to be sent home. So again, the importance of us looking at this on a regular basis, calibrating, getting on the same page where there's consistency throughout building to building on things of when they are, you know, to be suspended, when they're not. And usually buildings do that, quite frankly. You'll see, if you go to professional development, what you'll see is building principals and leadership teams, or even the entire faculties is one I've been in. They will be sitting down talking about what their build, because each building is different, behaviors are different, all kinds of things. So they'll sit and discuss what goes to the office, what does not go to the office. Now, as it relates to that, I think, again, the more professional development that is given to the principals, as she stated that they will be doing in the Principals Academy, I believe the better the reporting will be, the consistency of what we report, what you don't report, or whatever it is that you do. It will be consistent if we have learning, professional learning that is occurring. So I believe that it will get better because of that.
So as we raise expectations, then if something misses an expectation, it becomes more obvious than it would now, where somebody might say, oh, well, I just thought that this wasn't referable or whatever. But
Yeah.
now they all know, everybody knows what the expectation is. We're all on a level playing field. So now when you start to hear those complaints, it becomes more,
What you will hear, you're going to always have complaints,
Sure.
but what you're going to see is a decrease in those complaints. Because if people are on the same page, there's conversations happening, you're monitoring your data, you're providing the quality professional development that is needed for the staff members and the parents, then I believe that you're going to begin to see the trajectory of what's happening with the behavior change.
okay, I will concede that you're correct in 95% of the cases, but I would also say that there will be the one or two out there who will not live up to the expectation. So then, to me, that's where the question of accountability comes. Do they understand that that's not acceptable? And you'll, maybe as you go through some things, you'll help us understand what accountability means and an expectation on the side of that. But I love I love high expectations. I have them of everyone and all the time, and too many sometimes. But I also know if there's not some accountability piece that says if you don't do this, then these things will happen, then there are some people they're not going to live up to those high expectations. So you have to have something in the system that handles that. But most people will. I mean, I think most of our principals are amazing, and maybe all of them are right now. I don't know them all. But I also know there's often a person in there that just misses it for whatever reason. Maybe they're having a life crisis or something.
We're going to focus back now to those 3 areas that were on the first slide that we talked about. And the first is that partnership with HR and retention and hiring practices in our schools. First being recruiting. We know that we have some veteran teachers who have a passion for our schools with multiple risk factors. I know on a personal note, as a teacher and an administrator, I wanted to be in ELL schools. That is my passion. I've always taught or been in Title I ELL buildings. If you put me at another building with a different demographic, I may not be nearly as effective. So it's finding our veteran teachers that are out there. We actually have a school that I'm aware of now that has 3 veterans moving in, and a brand-new assistant principal who said, please place me at a building like this. This is where I'm going to make the most difference. This is where I'm going to affect kids and really do what I want to do. So we will be working with HR and recruiting people, even teachers within our own district, to do that very work. We will also work on reinventing our Grow Your Own, and Shannon Crystal has some great ideas on that. But we know that we also need to be proactive in identifying potential new hires, and we have a great partnership with Wichita State. We have a lot of student teachers in our buildings, and so if we can identify those student teachers that, again, have the passion for a large urban district, and some of our schools that may be their passion, much like mine, an ELL title building, then can we place those Wichita State students in those schools to do their student teaching? And so we're going to work with Wichita State and some of that placement to make sure that we have those students in the right fit to begin with. And then also retention. So HR is going to offer some workshops on retention for our leaders, and also some leadership workshops, which we hope will, again, help those help building principals take our high expectations back to the building. This is how you lead professional development. This is how you lead staff, and create a different culture within the buildings. The second piece of that is a culture of expectancy with that social, emotional character development. And again, this goes back to what Dr. Irving was talking about with the professional development plans, and making sure that those are aligned with district's Kansas Star plans, making sure that it's aligned to the needs that the teachers and the building committees have identified as areas of need and want in professional learning. And those plans will be turned in to the elementary office, and again, the academic learning, leadership team will have access to that. And so when we are in buildings, we will be able to know before we go what areas the buildings have focused to work on, and then we should be able to see some evidence of that as we're in those buildings. Also, again, shoring up our MTSS and safe and civil work, which is that rubric that we've discussed earlier. And then looking at that data, creating that culture of expectancy, like Dr. Thompson said, to look at data, analyze data. We know we have some buildings with some above average behavior incidents. So what is causing that? What are some proactive things we can do as we plan for the future to hopefully sort of nip that in the bud? Part of that might be shoring up the MTSS. Part of it might be work that with trauma and seeing kids through a different lens. Understanding why Michelle acted out today probably may not have had something to do with the math lesson, may be something else that's going on in life. So looking at kids through a different lens that way. And then we're going to pilot in a couple of schools some trauma work. And again, that will be based on making sure that we have some things already in place in our buildings before we move into that work. But it really is, we know we have some buildings where our kids come with those chronic stressors, and so if we're going to teach social, emotional, character development like we teach math and reading, which I think we should, it's the business of our business, then we need to make sure that our teachers fully understand our kiddos in front of us.
We have a question.
Mhm.
Ms. Arnold?
Actually, this will come under the heading of retention. And I know that there are teachers that can be amazing in one building and not really meet standards in another. And knowing that and knowing how important it is to, I guess, match teachers to either buildings or leaders, how do we address that as under retention, keeping them? How do we ensure that a teacher is in the right building so that he or she can be successful?
I think for us, that's kind of twofold. One is understanding that, you know, human capital is our most precious commodity that we have. And so if we have great teachers in our building, that maybe that building is just not the right fit, through the leadership work, hopefully, that the elementary office will do with our principals, principals can lead and have those conversations with teachers about, is this the right building for you? So that is some of the leadership work that we will be doing. Also partnering with HR, I know that Shannon Crystal has developed these leadership sessions for our principals that they will be attending, and that will also be a focus of the conversation, you know, just simply leading a conversation around how do we identify what your passion is. And if that's, you know, that's a good question, and there could be some things that we look into further. I mean, do we do surveys? You saw the power of the survey that Dr. Irving showed to us, so those are definitely things that we could look into.
Would that be a mar on that teacher? As an example, I can function well in this building, not so well here. How do we, and I think that's critical just in terms of retention, because.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know that it would be a mark. We have so many teachers already in the district that move from building to building. Like I said, we have one building where we have 3 veteran teachers moving in this year because that's their passion. I think teachers in our district feel that that's a choice. That's one of the perks, frankly, of working in a district this large, is that there are a lot of options for you.
Okay, thank you.
And
We have
finally.
one more question.
yep.
Joy?
Okay, it's me again, sorry. But just thinking about retention and hiring practices, and I've mentioned this before at the board table, but one thing that always strikes me about school districts is there are really great educators in our district, but for them to advance in their career, they have to leave the classroom and become administrators. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are called to do that. I mean, Dr. Thompson was a kindergarten teacher. She worked her way up, and now she's superintendent, and she was called to that. That's her passion. But not all teachers are called into that leadership role. So then they're in this, I mean, they're teachers, they're great teachers, they're like well above average teachers, but there's no way for them to advance their career. And we see this in the technology world all the time, because programmers, we often try and make them managers of something, and then they're terrible at that because they don't work with people well, and so we make them programmers again. But in the technology world, what we do is we give them like they become master level people, and all the other programmers come to them to see what they're doing, to see how they're doing things, and they do what they're passionate about, and they model it for others. And one thing that does is allow for retention, because they can still advance in their career, but it also helps for recruiting, because we lost our senior developer a year ago, and my 2 younger guys have been like, man, I really need a senior person that I can go ask those questions to. And so, you know, that you need that senior person to mentor and work with. And we do some of that through some of the partnering programs that we do. But what I wonder is, as we move forward and think about this issue, is there a place for our teachers to grow their skills as educators in the classroom, and beyond an award once a year, really allow them to grow their career and take it in a different direction? So they kind of become a trainer of teachers, but just by being in the classroom, not by leaving.
Yeah, we do have a couple of opportunities that come to my mind. One would be, we have team leads especially in the elementary ranks where, we want somebody with those skills that you just described to be the leader of a fourth grade team or a kindergarten team. There's some opportunity then to be, because you're that team leader, to be on a school leadership team, whether it's behavior or academics, and present and go to trainings and learn information and share that with the rest of the staff. So those are two things that come to my mind just right off the bat.
But the compensation for those is not nearly what it is for an administrator. And I guess that's my point is if you want to grow your salary, say you've got a family, you need to grow your salary
Right.
for them. You can't do that in the classroom. And yet, I think all of us sitting here would say, without our teachers, I mean, we couldn't do the work that we're doing. So how can we find a way to value, not just value what they're doing, but value with real dollars what the really superb ones are doing? I just think it's something to consider and think about. How do we get creative about retaining veteran teachers in our district who have shown that they're really good at what they do? So I'll put that out there, and then we can go whatever. But I see some heads nodding, so that's not dead on arrival.
And finally, culture. We will strive to learn from our schools that have already created that positive culture through our professional learning with principals, and also continue our leadership work and the accountability that we will have through our discussions and consultancy groups at Principals Learning Academy. Again, our work with understanding those kiddos that are sitting in front of us and how to layer in some of those strategies into our instructional strategies. And then something that Dr. Thompson has talked a lot about is our strategic community partnerships and welcoming the community into our school in ways that will benefit our kiddos as well as our community. So, thank you.
We have one more question. Ms. Logan?
And this is just a comment because I am so glad to see us intentionally embedding social emotional character development in our plans that loops so tightly with what's happening at the state and their new standards.
Yes.
And we now have made it very visible, and I think that's a real plus, so thank you very much.